Hello and welcome back to my channel. My next 80th villain is going to be Melisha Tweddy, otherwise known as Mrs. Tweddy. So, I've seen Chicken Run when I was little, and it kind of scared me because of her, because of that monstrous look on her face and the eyebrows and the smile. Ugh. So, Melisha Tweddy, also known as Mrs. Tweddy, is the main antagonist of DreamWorks' full-length animated feature film Chicken Run, which is Aardman's first feature film. She is Mr. Tweedy's wife and boss, and Ginger's arch-nemesis. Her personality. Mrs. Tweddy is an extremely selfish, greedy, ruthless, manipulative, and hot-tempered woman who only uses the chickens to get money, which she and her husband are very low on. She is always looking for a chance to abuse her husband and the chickens, and despite her temper, she is occasionally shown to be quite clever and intellectual. She is the one who comes up with the idea of buying a pie machine to use to make more profit from the chickens. She is specifically impatient and temperamental with her husband, shown when she is contemplating buying the pie machine, and when the pie machine is broken, it is also demonstrated that she and her husband have a quarrelsome disagreement on many things. When Mr. Tweedy is attacked by the chickens, he abusively calls to her, "The chickens are revolting," and she, doing other things at the time, says to herself, "Finally, something we agree on." However, she did not know that he did not mean revolt in the context which she was thinking of. She is also shown to be a very tough and resilient woman who is possibly happy with the idea of murdering the chickens, displayed with the evil smile that she gave to the chickens that she selected for slaughter during roll call right before they were killed. She is also very abusive, defamatory, argumentative, and opprobrious towards the chickens, her husband, and possibly also her dogs, as they are shown to be afraid of her. In the 1950s, in the film, a chicken named Ginger, the heroine of the film, made several failed attempts for her and her fellow chickens to escape from Mrs. Tweedy's farm in Yorkshire, England. As it turns out, Mrs. Tweedy runs the farm like a concentration camp, forcing the chickens to produce eggs to sell for profit and killing those who failed to produce any eggs for a week. As the year goes by, Mrs. Tweedy discovers that profits are constantly going down due to low amounts of eggs being laid. Her husband, Mr. Tweedy, correctly suspects the chickens are up to something due to their attempts to escape, but Mrs. Tweedy brushes this off, believing that they, apart from Mr. Tweedy, are the stupidest creatures on the planet. After seeing an ad for a pie machine, Mrs. Tweedy decides to purchase it to all the chickens into pies in a bid to increase her profits. After purchasing the machine, Mrs. Tweedy and her husband attempt to kill Ginger in their machine in order to test it, but are thwarted when a visiting American rooster named Rocky rescue her and clogs the gravy sprayer, almost destroying the machine. The chickens begin to prepare their ultimate escape plan, creating an airplane out of their sheds to fly off the farm. In the meantime, Mrs. Tweedy forces Mr. Tweedy to fix the machine after the repairs are done. Mrs. Tweedy tells Mr. Tweedy to fetch all the chickens. However, Mr. Tweedy finds out that most of his tools were stolen from the chickens for the chickens' plan, but he is attacked by the chickens and tied up. He attempts to warn Mrs. Tweedy about this, but she ignores him, unaware of what is going on. Seriously. And he says, "The chickens are revolting." which she mistakenly says, "Finally, something we agree on." Just as Ginger, anyway, just as Ginger is about to set up the ramp to help the airplane fly off, Mrs. Tweedy tries to stop her with her axe. Finally seeing what's really going on. Fortunately, Rocky, who left until he saw an advertisement for Mrs. Tweedy's chicken pies, returns and uses his bike to knock Mrs. Tweedy unconscious. Accidentally throwing the axe in the air, Mrs. Tweedy came to and sees the axe land right next to her neck, making her pass out again due to the shock. With that in mind, Rocky and Ginger set the ramp before escaping with the other chickens in their plane. However, Mrs. Tweedy wakes up and goes off in pursuit of the escaping chickens by grabbing onto the dragging rope. Now insanely mad, she climbs herself up to stop the plane, even if it means endangering her own life. Fortunately, Ginger tricks Mrs. Tweedy into cutting the rope with her axe, and she lands in the safety valve of the pie machine, causing it to explode due to the overwhelming pressure that the gravy has caused, destroying much of the barn. Despite having survived the explosion, Mrs. Tweedy finds herself covered in gravy and stuck inside the same pipe detached from the machine by the explosion. As the chickens have finally escaped from the farm, Mr. Tweedy, having untied himself and escaped the explosion unscratched, berates his wife for not listening to him about the chickens in the first place. This only enrages Mrs. Tweedy, but before she can lash out at her husband for his incompetence, a fed-up Mr. Tweedy pushes the heavy barn door down on his wife after he finally had enough of his wife's abuse. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, subscribe, and comment below. And one more thing. Mrs. Tweedy did deserve it for her husband's incompetence. So he decided to push the farm door and squash her, instantly killing her for suffering from her abuse and her overwhelming impatientness. So, see you soon. Allons-y.